To glimpse the future of homeless policy in the age of President Trump, consider 16 acres of scrubby pasture on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, where the state plans to place as many as 1,300 homeless people in what supporters call a services camp and critics deem a detention camp. State planners say the site, announced last month after a secretive search, will treat addiction and mental illness and provide a humane alternative to the streets, where afflictions often go untreated and people die at alarming rates. They also vow stern measures to move homeless people to the remote site and force many of them to undergo treatment, reflecting a nationwide push by some conservatives for a new approach to homelessness, one embraced and promoted by President Trump. Seems like a pretty quick fix to me, with no lasting help for the actual people, the homeless people, the human beings involved in this barbaric experiment. With outdoor sleeping bans, removal to the edge of town may become the only way some homeless Utahns can avoid jail. Planners say the facility will also hold hundreds of mentally ill homeless people under court-ordered civil commitment, and the effort will include an accountability center for those. An accountability center is involuntary, okay? You're not coming home and out. Randy Shumway, chairman of the State Homeless Services Board, said in an interview. Utah will end a harmful culture of permissiveness, he said, and guide homeless people towards human thriving. While the Utah effort began before Mr. Trump's return to office, it mirrors his pledge to move the homeless from urban cores to tent cities with services. And it accelerated after Mr. Trump issued an executive order in July calling for strict camping bans and expanded power to involuntarily treat homeless people. Involuntarily commit them and medicate them. Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, quickly praised Mr. Trump's order and told Utah planners to follow it. Critics of the new plan say that confining people to a site on the city's outskirts threatens civil liberties and warn that the promised services may not materialize. The efforts coincide with deep cuts to Medicaid, which could thwart the project's financing. I'm super anxious about it, said Jen Plum, a physician and Democratic state senator who calls the promise of high-quality medical care pie in the sky. Utah already has a severe shortage of psychiatric beds, she noted. The legislature is unlikely to fund hundreds of new beds, she said, and even if it did, there's no workforce to staff them. Without enormous new spending, she said, the center could function less as a treatment facility than a prison or a warehouse. The emerging portrait of the Utah Center, scheduled to open in 2027, brings to life a vow that Mr. Trump made 2 years ago in an extraordinary campaign video. Accusing homeless people of turning great cities into unsanitary nightmares, he pledged to use every tool, lever, and authority to get the homeless off our streets. He said that the administration would open up large parcels of inexpensive land where dangerously deranged people can be relocated and their problems identified. Much about Utah's plans remain unclear, including the details of involuntary treatment, what a proposal calls work-conditioned housing, which is forced labor. Let's call this shit what it is right now. Forced labor camps. And whether the residents will sleep in buildings or tents. But supporters called it a model. Utah is a harbinger of the future, said Devin Kurtz of the Cicero Institute, a conservative policy group that has pushed for changes in Utah and at the federal level. The national push for stern measures follows a decade in which unsheltered homelessness grew nearly 60%, according to federal data. A result of factors that include spiking rents and untreated mental illness and substance abuse. How do you think people are going to live? They've already just squeezed out the middle class to where it's just mostly poor people, working poor people, and the billionaires. And then you have some people that are murky in the middle. People have millions of dollars of worth or property, but are still living paycheck to paycheck. Doesn't make any fucking sense. There's plenty enough in the world for everybody to be happy and healthy. But, white men got greed, right? As tent clusters and open-air drug use rose, so did calls for encampment bans. The move for stricter measures gained momentum last year after the Supreme Court ruled that authorities could ban camping even in places that lacked shelter space. Although Utah seems the clearest example of what Mr. Trump has in mind, other communities have used threats of arrest to move homeless people to designated areas. As New Orleans prepared for this year's Super Bowl, state police moved more than 120 people from downtown to a distant warehouse, hastily converted for 3 months into a shelter. San Diego enforced, at least they built a shelter. San Diego enforces a camping ban punishable by arrest while designating 2 tent sites with a total of 800 beds as an alternative to the street. But a recent lawsuit faults the sites for inhumane conditions, including rats, mold, and risks of fire and floods. In Las Vegas, a $200 million homeless campus is under construction, with half of the money coming from the casino industry and concerns that homelessness depress tourism. It promises 900 beds across 26 acres with intensive services and coincides with new prohibitions on sleeping in public, punishable by up to 10 days in jail. Well, at least they'll be warm and they'll have food. Utah's plan is novel in that it combines elements of a homeless shelter and a psychiatric hospital, sharply expanding involuntary treatment. Critics say it accelerates a disturbing shift towards coercion. And moving marginalized people to government camps, they say, is an idea with a long and shameful history. It's what they did in World War II in Japanese detention camps, said Jesse Rabanowitz of the National Homeless Law Center, a Washington advocacy group. This reads similar to rounding up Jews and other people like the Nazis did. Asked in the confirmation process if he supported relocation camps for homeless people, Scott Turner, the housing secretary, did not reject the idea. Our current approach to addressing homelessness is badly broken, he wrote. Utah's pivot is especially radical. It was once a leader in Housing First, an approach to homelessness that prioritizes permanent housing and offers treatment on a voluntary basis. Housing First has been the standard approach nationally for more than a decade, with studies showing it is effective in keeping people housed, but it is expensive and slow, and there is less evidence that it improves health outcomes. The Utah plan returns to an earlier treatment-first model that conditions aid on sobriety or compliance with psychiatric treatment. Celebrated by conservatives, such programs offer the hope of healing, but risk excluding people who cannot or will not comply. That's the problem. I mean, I've been homeless, If you can give people treatment, people don't want to get sober, they're not going to get sober. That's just all there is to it. You have to be ready to stop doing drugs. If you're not ready, you're not going to succeed. And as it stands, some things don't work for some people. I don't go to NA, but I've been sober for over 8 years. I just can't sit in a room and talk about dope with people. That doesn't do me good. As the planning for the facility got underway last year, the Republican-dominated legislature replaced the state's homeless planning board, which included many nonprofit providers, with a smaller body dominated by political appointees and business figures. It's money, money, money. It's always about money. It is led by Mr. Shumway, a Salt Lake City management consultant appointed to the role by Mr. Cox. In an interview in his Salt Lake City office, Mr. Shumway, 53, toggled between the language of the boardroom and the pulpit. He said a management consulting approach would make homeless services more efficient, measuring individuals' progress through a system of behavioral targets he calls the pathway to human thriving. I don't know. It's a bunch of crap. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's, an easy fix. They think, get them out of sight. We don't want to look at them anymore, which has been kind of the approach to homelessness in a long time. But you don't put people in camps, and you don't involuntary commit people because they get abused, they get doped up, like out of their mind, so that they'll never get better, they'll never be productive. And if that's what you want to do, then comes euthanization, right? Let's be honest.